The sea stopped singing the night the wrong child took the throne. Waves crashed against the coral walls of Liraven, as if mourning a truth buried beneath them, a truth born from envy, sealed in silence, and waiting for the tide to rise again. The kingdom of Liraven floated between sea and sky, a realm of coral towers, singing waves, and moonlit festivals. Its people lived by one law of the ocean. Only those born under the moon's tide may rule, for the sea gives its blessing to few. For years that blessing had rested on Queen Naelora, a woman whose kindness could calm storms. She ruled not with power, but with mercy. Her laughter could make the coral bloom, and her tears could summon rain. Now, the sea whispered of a coming birth. Naelora carried her first child, and the royal prophets declared a great prophecy. A daughter born under full tide shall bind the sea and sky forever. Every creature of Liraven, from the smallest fish to the grandest whale, waited in hope for that daughter. The ocean itself seemed to hold its breath. Everyone wished for her arrival. Everyone except Virel, Naelora's younger sister. From her coral balcony, Virel watched the waves crash against the palace cliffs. Her face was beautiful, but cold, her heart sharper than the pearls she wore. The wind carried the people's songs, all praising the unborn princess, and each note burned her pride. If she gives birth to a daughter, Virel whispered bitterly, I'll be forgotten. She clutched the shell pendant around her neck, their late mother's keepsake, carved with the mark of queenship. Naelora had been given the throne, but Virel had been given only the shadow of envy. Day after day, she stood at her balcony, watching the tides come and go, while jealousy grew in her chest like dark coral, silent but spreading. That same week, as if fate heard her bitterness, a stranger arrived. On the palace shores, her name was Luma, a humble fisherwoman from the distant Tide Isles. She was heavy with child and weary from travel. The guards at first wanted to turn her away, but Naelora, soft-hearted as always, ordered that she be given shelter, food, and rest for the night. Luma thanked them, unaware that her arrival had stirred the attention of someone else. From her high chamber window, Virel saw the fisherwoman being led inside and whispered to herself, 2 women expecting, 1 queen, 1 peasant. How convenient. Her mind began to twist the thought into something dangerous, something she could not yet say aloud. But envy often whispers before it commands. That evening, in the under chambers of the palace, Virel met her most loyal handmaiden, Selith, a timid woman whose loyalty had long been bent by fear. The torches flickered low, casting ghost-like shadows on the coral walls as Virel spoke. Naelora will bear a girl. Luma carries a boy. Before dawn, I want their babies exchanged. Selith froze, her hands shaking. That's treason, my queen-to-be. Virel's gaze turned cold. Greater than treason will make me queen. For a long moment, the chamber was silent, but for the dripping of seawater through the ceiling. Selith bowed her head, not out of loyalty, but out of terror. The storm came on the night of the births. Lightning cracked across the waves, and the palace shook as 2 cries echoed through the night, one royal, one humble. Naelora, drenched in sweat and tears, held her newborn daughter with trembling arms. Luma, in a modest chamber below, clutched her son and whispered prayers of gratitude. In the chaos, Selith crept through the corridors, carrying 1 child, her face ghost-white. She made the switch beneath the roaring thunder, placing the fisherwoman's son beside the queen and the true princess into the arms of the sleeping Luma. By sunrise, the kingdom rejoiced. The midwives proclaimed, "A prince is born." Bells rang across the reefs. Dolphins leapt for joy. And Naelora, weak but smiling, whispered, A son? Then the sea has chosen differently. But in the deepest part of the ocean, the water trembled. The sea knows when a lie is born. Days later, Naelora's health began to fail. She felt a hollowness she could not explain, as if the waves no longer sang to her. One night she turned to her sister and asked softly, "Where is my daughter?" "I dream of her crying in the dark." Virel forced a smile. "You bore a son, my queen. Rest now, the people need your strength." Naelora frowned, her heart breaking in quiet disbelief. That night, Virel came to her chamber again, carrying a silver cup filled with moonroot, a poison so gentle it smelled of lilies. "And drink," she said sweetly. "It will ease your pain." Naelora, too weak to suspect betrayal, lifted the cup and drank. Within minutes, her breaths grew shallow. She turned toward her sister with glassy eyes and whispered her final words. "The sea will remember." By dawn, the kingdom wept for their lost queen. Virel stood before her coffin, dressed in shimmering black pearls, shedding tears that the people mistook for grief. And when the crown was placed upon her head, the ocean fell silent. No song, no tide, no blessing. The people called it fate. The ocean called it theft. The years rolled by like tired waves, and Queen Virel sat upon her coral throne as though she were born for it. To the people she looked radiant, draped in moonlight pearls and crowned with the shells of rare sea spirits. She spoke kindly, smiled often, and gave gifts of silver to her court. But the sea had grown silent. At every tide festival, when the musicians played and children threw petals into the surf, the waves refused to dance. The ocean no longer sang its old lullaby around the palace cliffs. The dolphins stopped coming close. Even the seabirds flew elsewhere. The priests whispered among themselves. The sea grows quiet when it grieves. And though Virel laughed at the feasts, her laughter echoed strangely, hollow, like a sound made in a place the sea no longer claimed. At night she dreamed of whispers rising from the deep, of a voice calling her name, not in love, but in mourning. She would wake drenched in sweat, clutching her crown as though afraid it might vanish before dawn. "The sea will remember," she heard in every silence. And deep down, she feared it already had. Far beyond the glittering capital, on the edge of the tide isles, a humble fisherwoman named Luma lived quietly with the child she believed was her own. The girl's name was Nerida, and from the moment she could walk, she was drawn to the water. Luma often found her sitting by the shore before sunrise, her small hands tracing circles in the wet sand.
Then pray for them.
When the waves rolled near, she would whisper softly, "It listens to me." And strangely, the sea did. Whenever Nerida spoke to it, the ripples shimmered in gentle response, as though greeting an old friend. The other villagers said she had the ocean's eyes, a shade too bright to be human, a calmness too deep for a child. She grew up helping her mother mend nets and sell shells at the market, never knowing her name was once written in prophecy. Sometimes she would dream of a grand palace made of coral and glass, where a woman cried over an empty cradle. She always woke with tears in her eyes, though she could never explain why. "I just feel like someone is lost," she'd tell Luma. "Then pray for them," her mother would say, brushing her hair with love. And she did.
Then pray for them.
Every night Nerida prayed for someone she had never met, and the sea seemed to listen. Meanwhile, the cracks in Queen Virel's kingdom began to show. The tides no longer obeyed the moon. Fish began swimming inland and dying in the rivers. The coral reefs that once glowed in every color started turning gray. The moonlight itself seemed tired, fading too soon after dusk. The people whispered that the sea was angry, that it wanted something back. One day the High Seer, An old woman, blind since birth, but able to see the language of waves, came trembling into the royal court. She bowed before Virel and spoke in a voice that sounded like surf crashing against rocks. "Your Majesty, the ocean is restless. The throne holds a false crown. The sea remembers its blood." The words struck like thunder. Virel froze, but only for a moment. Then she forced a smile. "Greater than. The sea forgets faster than men do, old one. You should rest before your mind drowns in superstition." The guards led the seer away, but as she turned, the old woman whispered to herself, "The sea forgets nothing, and it will speak again through its child." That night lightning danced far beyond the horizon, not from a storm, but from the sea itself.